Coming up on FTC Recap, guests Ethan and Luke from goBILDA join us on air as we discuss the latest headlines, some of the new goBILDA products, and play fun trivia. All this and more coming up on FTC Recap.
Giving you a voice.
Making it loud our own way.
Welcome to the fun.
First Updates Now FTC is produced in partnership with the Orange Alliance. Make TOA your place to go for FTC team stats and event results at theorangealliance.org. And also, viewers like you. We need your help to keep fun loud, live, and independent. Help us by visiting our Patreon to pledge your support at patreon.com/First Updates Now. You can also support fun live on Twitch for a few bucks a month or by linking your Prime account for free and clicking subscribe.
Welcome to FTC Recap, where you get the latest breakdown and discussion of what's going on in the FTC community. From First Updates Now, I'm Ishan. Joining me is Ashray.
We'd like to welcome our guests, Ethan and Luke, from the company goBILDA. goBILDA is a part maker under the company Robotics. Many of their parts are targeted at competitive robotics teams and are a favorite for many FTC teams. Thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thank you guys for having us. It's a blast to be here as always.
Yeah, glad to be here.
We've got some awesome giveaways that goBILDA is providing us, and we'll be giving them out throughout the show, so make sure to stay tuned. With that being said, let's get into our headlines. Steets on the FTC Reddit posted a video of a Rev Control Hub, running Doom, the first popular first-person shooter game. They had to sideload the app since it isn't officially supported. Did you guys see this? Like, I started nerding out when I saw this.
Yeah.
It was really funny to see an original post that was like, oh man, Doom can't run on the control hub, and then someone took it as a challenge. That was fun.
Yeah. I mean, it just looks really cool in itself, and it kind of also shows like the power of the control hub. I remember when I first saw the HDMI port on the control hub, I was very confused by that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a 1993 game, so I'm not sure it's the most powerful, but it gets the job done. Tyler,
Yeah.
did you play Doom when you were...
No knocking Doom, guys. Doom was amazing back in the day. Come on, this is like first time you were able to do things like network multiplayer and stuff like that. So Doom's incredible, it still is.
Pretty cool. Ashay, want to move on?
Yeah, let's go on. So for our next headline, we have that first recently launched a comprehensive guide on how to go through the self-scoring process. To summarize it, basically the whole scoring process is through an application which you can access through your first account if your team is registered for the season. The guide goes way more in detail, explaining the do's and don'ts of what to do when scoring yourself for the remote event process. Any thoughts on the whole team scoring process itself?
I mean, we've said this before. A lot of people aren't a fan of not having video confirmation, but I'm glad that First is putting out the resources, even though knowing a lot of teams, they aren't going to read them. I don't know. Ethan, Luke, anything to add?
I really like the way Pennsylvania I've heard that is running events where they are having teams show up one at a time at an event center with a ref. That seems like it's a really solid way to go. But I'm glad that First is publishing resources about how to do it on your own if you need to.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing the gluten-free video at First like a few weeks ago, and it was great. It showed me like a little bit about how it's gonna work basically, but I feel like now with this guide out, I skimmed through it a little bit, and it looks really comprehensive, really goes in detail about a lot of those small things that people might be curious about. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then like also there's a lot of regions trying to make in-person events happen. Like Virginia, DC, Maryland is doing 8 teams at each section of an event, and then they combine multiple 8 teams to make one full event. We'll have to see. I think it'll be interesting once we actually get the season rolling around. In other news related to the game, on the FTC forum, it was recently ruled that teams may be requested to demonstrate that their robot does not shoot more than 16 feet at traditional events. This is up to the discretion of the referee, and it does not take into account the net at the end of the field. This means that teams can technically not shoot from everywhere in the launching zone, because if the net at the end of the field wasn't there, they'd be shooting further than 16 feet. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, when I first saw this, I was very scared by it because I mean, seeing all the shooters that we have right now, like the most accurate ones are the ones that can shoot that have very powerful shots and that shoot as straight as possible. But the problem is that now they can't be that powerful because they're limited by that 16 feet very strictly. So, I mean, that just means that your robot has to shoot very accurately and consistently without also having too much power. So that's going to be a very interesting balance.
How far was your robot able to shoot in Robot in 3 days, like without anything there?
I think we got it pretty close to being under 16 feet.
Yeah, I think when we originally built it, it was a little bit over, and we had to dial it back just a hair to get it to be, compliant.
Yeah.
So.
Noting that we weren't very consistently hitting the high goal.
That is true, yeah.
So we aren't the greatest point of reference there, but
for sure.
It definitely seems tight to not hit 16 feet on a very good shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I hope that...
Go ahead.
I see Jason in the chat has mentioned what I call the Volkswagen strategy of just turning down your motor power when the refs ask you about it.
Nice.
Definitely not in the spirit of the rules. I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, it says that it's on like the referee's like discretion, so it's possible that if you're shooting 17 or 18 feet, it's probably gonna be negligible to the refs, so they might not ask you about it. But still, it's very, very thin line to be on.
I mean, if you're taking shots from the back of the field, they're going to call you. Like,
Right.
That's effectively what they've done, right? If you're taking a 12-foot shot, which I know a lot of these shooters can take, right? Like, I've seen Wizards prototype. They've been able to hit a 12-foot shot pretty consistently. Look, you're going to get called a penalty, and you're going to be called to get your robot re-inspected. So it'll be interesting. Want to talk about the first competition that we actually saw?
Yeah, so one of the very first qualifiers this season took place last weekend in St. Petersburg, Russia on October 18th. A total of 11 teams competed across 17 qualifier matches, getting a high score of 92 points. A few of the teams had basic spindle intakes and flywheel shooters, but the majority of teams had either claws or basic attachments to score the rings into the logo. Unfortunately, there were also a ton of disconnects throughout the day, which made it less entertaining to watch. But did you guys notice anything in particular from that competition?
Yeah, so I took a little bit of time to watch it. I watched it briefly. It was clear that the only team that could shoot there was the team that won. By a significant margin, they swept all of their matches, and they were hitting some shots in autonomous. So as soon as you hit a shot during autonomous, it's over if nobody else can shoot.
Right.
But I think you can also see a lot about how the rings move around the field just watching these matches, because even if teams aren't shooting, there's still a lot of them were driving around. So you'll see where the rings set up. There were two main spaces, one in front of the human players and one at the back of the field. So that will be quite interesting. Did you guys watch that, goBILDA?
I watched a few matches. It was interesting to see how the ring placement doesn't seem that far off from FTC Sim, which sounds insane, but it seems kind of close. So that is interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. That was our last headline for today. Now we're going to switch into our next session called Let's Discuss That. So in this section, we're going to be talking with Ethan and Luke from goBILDA about goBILDA and some of the new parts. So to start us off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, goBILDA? How did it start? What's its relation to RobotZome and Actobotics?
Yeah, so as many of you guys probably know, we share a parent company with Actobotics in Servo City called the RobotZone. That's kind of the company that's been around for over 20 years now and is making all of those parts. So Luke and I both work a lot on Actobotics and Servo City parts as well as goBILDA stuff. And a lot of the team behind both are the same. So Actobotics is definitely the older product line that was kind of around for a long time before goBILDA entered development. And I don't think either of us were actually around for the first stages of goBILDA, but
I think I interned right about the time we were just getting some of the first production parts, and this was probably 2 years before we actually went live and started selling a lot of the goBILDA stuff. So yeah, my roots are definitely ingrained a lot in the Acrobotics stuff, and then taking a lot of that knowledge and then taking it to goBILDA and making goBILDA better. For sure.
So goBILDA kind of was the second pass at a robot building system, and a bunch of the aspects of the Acrobotics line that you can't change after the line starts to exist, you are able to step back and redesign with goBILDA. So stuff like the hole pattern in Acrobotics, it can be a little limiting, which always sounds silly when I tell somebody who is not super into it that the hole pattern on Acrobotics isn't as good. They always laugh at me. But it's not as scalable as the goBILDA hole pattern, where you can put pretty much bolt anything to anywhere, and that's really not as true in Servo City or in Acrobotics. Yep. So
And you mentioned Servo City. Could you just talk a little bit about what that is?
So Servo City is kind of the other website where you can buy Robot Zone parts primarily from us. So Servo City is where we sell Acrobotics, and also where we sell, as I'm sure you've guessed, a lot of servos and a lot of outside of FTC motors. Servo City has a little bit more of a focus on the hobbyist and industrial space, or goBILDA right now at least has a lot more focus on education and FTC.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great summary of both those companies. So let's get into some of your newer products. Recently, you guys released 96 millimeter Mecanum wheels that are slightly smaller in diameter compared to the old 100 millimeter goBILDA Mecanum wheels, but they're also significantly slimmer. They have a different durometer compared to those wheels as well. Could you talk about them a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We had our Mecanum wheels, our old ones, and we learned a lot from the FTC community about how we can take those wheels and make them better. And so that's exactly what we did. Is we always strive to make our products better, and so that's what we did with our Mecanum wheels. A lot of the slimness design driving factor came from our Strafer chassis, in that we wanted to get a lot of the rails a little bit wider here. And so with slimmer Mecanum wheels, we're able to make that happen. So that was one of the huge goals of redesigning the Mecanum wheels.
Yeah, so we had a 10-hole crossbar on the Strafer chassis V2, which had old Mecanums, and this is a 12? No, sorry. This is
Should be
a 10. Yep.
Yeah.
So that it gives you a lot more center space to work with mechanisms, and just overall is a lot nicer. And actually, our Beeline chassis uses a 10-hole crossbar too, so a lot of those components can kind of mix and match.
Absolutely, yeah.
Might be a little easier if you're want to switch from Mecanum to 6-wheel drive halfway through the season.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
I also heard that they were supposed to release before the season started.
Sure. I mean, that was definitely the ideal. COVID kind of put a 2-month backlog on everything, so that definitely pushed our ETA back some.
Yeah, we definitely try to push things out as quickly as we can. We don't, finish up a design and then sit on it for 6 months and then say, oh yeah, we'll come out with it eventually. We go step by step. So when the design process is done, then we go to the next step and so on. So yeah, so we bring it to the customer as quickly as we possibly can, but we definitely don't want to cut it at quarters. That's very important.
Yep. Cool. 2 things. 1, can you release a Bob Ross video on how to paint these Mecanum wheels? And 2, talking about the Strafer kit, can you talk about some of the other changes that you've made for this new version of the Strafer kit compared to last year? Tons of teams used it last year. I know Wizards released a video about it last year, and I recommended it to pretty much every rookie. Could you talk a little bit more about those changes and what went into them?
Yeah, so I already hit on the longer crossbar, and we can do that because of the narrower Mecanums. With that, I'm going to compare all these things to the version 1, which is the kit you would have bought last year. We had a version 2 that was around for about a month this year. So this is a much faster ratio compared to the version 1. So this is a 19.2 compared to about 27-to-1 ratio. It does that through 19.2-to-1 motors and miter gears. It switched to 1-to-1 miter gears, which are a steel mod 1.5 or 1.25. It also switched to 8-rex shafting, and it didn't just switch to 8-rex shafting, it switched to a 2106 series 8-rex shafting, which has a snap ring and threaded ends, so we can really increase the quality of the kit while keeping the price the same, because we get rid of a lot of those collars. It also has thrust bearings behind the miters on the motor and the output side, and it's a lot easier to assemble.
Can you
The
dye
wheels
these
are
wheels?
also... Sorry?
Somebody's asking in the chat, William, can you dye the wheels?
Because the rollers are black, you probably would have a pretty hard time dyeing them. You can paint the plates, so we've actually got a red Mecanum here that I can get kind of more of a close-up on. But, yeah, there we go. So we just painted the side plates of this Mecanum, and I think it looks pretty cool. It's a little easier to do than dyeing, I think, and still lets you get your team colors in there. So, the other big advantage of these wheels over our old Mecanums are they are a lot lighter. We cut like 100 grams or a third of the weight off.
Yeah,
I think.
we cut a significant amount off.
So not only are they're steel and stronger,
They are stronger. Yeah, we had some issues with people dropping robots and bending them, and so yeah, we switched to steel and we're able to make them much stronger, a lot lighter as well.
Is there a reason you made them 96 millimeters instead of 100?
Yeah, so goBILDA, everything is on our 8 mil pattern, and the 96 is much more common size for goBILDA. You look at, our Rhino wheels, even our Omni wheels, they're 96 mil, and so it's much nicer to keep things more uniform across the build system.
And for a Mecanum, it's less about using it with other wheels on the same drivetrain and more about really accurately controlling the distance from your chassis to the ground. So now that is an on-pattern distance as opposed to being an off-pattern distance with a 100 mil wheel.
Yep.
Cool.
Wow, yeah.
Chat,
And
if you have any questions, make sure to tag at First Updates Now. We're also going to be taking people for trivia, so if you want to participate in trivia later on during the show, make sure to hop onto the call-in channel queue in the Discord, and the links for those are in the chat. Go ahead, Ashray.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I think another benefit of the 96 millimeter mechanical wheels is also that in the Strafer chassis, it kind of fits in line with the front of the U channel, if I'm doing my measurements correctly. So I think that's another really cool thing. So moving on, actually, goBILDA also released 2 new motors. One being a Yellow Jacket motor with the 1-to-1 gear ratio, and the other being a modern robotics motor with a Rex shaft and also the 1-to-1 ratio. So what went into designing these 2 motors? Were you guys planning on releasing them before the game was even announced, or were these made in direct response to the game being a shooting game?
To be honest, Luke and I missed out on the development of these because we were doing the stream. So it was a lot of really rapid development and getting something up. That speed that you require for a shooting game like this is really not something that we have had a need for before this game. So that was something we developed really rapidly. This is actually a shooter prototype we made to test how quickly you could overheat a motor by just using it on a shooter. And we really weren't able to get this one very hot at all. So that's why there are all these rings here.
Cool. And so could you talk a little bit about the differences between the 2 motors?
Yeah, so we've got one with a pressed-on 8-rex shaft, and that can be a lot more compact. And if you are kind of a team who knows what you're doing and you are solid and want the most compact option, it's a great option. But you don't have any integrated bearing support. So you really want to add a bearing to support the output shaft in your assembly, and most often you're using that in addition to a gear or a belt system to drive a flywheel. The other option is the 5202 form factor, so it's the same size and shape as the 5.2 or the 3.7 to 1 Yellow Jacket, and it's got the dual ball bearing support and everything, so it's much easier to use, and you can totally just bolt a wheel onto it and go right ahead.
So we got some people in the chat asking, could you demo that shooter? I don't know if you've got the batteries for it.
I don't have a wire right now anyway, but
We can find one.
Yeah.
We got one.
ooh,
out
we do
there.
have one.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Awesome.
There is also the other difference is that there's a bit of a speed difference between them because you just have a little more resistance. So on these motors, we have a listed tested spec where they do vary a little bit in speed. But once you add a bearing and a gear
Right.
belt system, you probably will be at a fairly comparable speed between the two. All right, so this is spinning the correct direction. It's really fun.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
Machine gun shooter.
Is somebody throwing those back at you, or are those being returned?
Yes.
They're boomerang rings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do it one more time.
One more time. Oh, that's so good.
My.
That's so satisfying.
It's super fun. So, and you can see, depending on how fast you shoot them, that motor starts to get bogged down. So I could see if you're trying to keep up a pace like that, you might need two motors, or you might need something to add a bit of inertia to that system.
Yeah.
Is that direct driven?
Yes.
That
That was another thing we wanted to test was what the impact of a direct-driven setup on the direct pressed-on motor was, and we've not been able to find any issues with it. It's ran just fine.
Mm-hmm.
There's not very much flex in that shaft, so we found that it's been fine in the limited amount of testing we've done, but it's still really nice to have a bearing support or something like that on the end.
Right.
On the other side, this is probably going to be the way to get a wheel spinning the fastest,
Yeah.
with a 1-to-1 ratio without overdriving it at all.
Yep.
Ring compression is, I don't remember. I think it actually varies from the input to the output. It's got more compression and it eases off as it goes through the travel of that curve.
And what wheel is that? Is that a hard wheel or is that a?
It's
Gecko
a
wheel?
72 mil Rhino.
Okay, cool. Some of the other products that you released that may not have gotten as much hype, let's go into a couple of those, like the Beeline chassis. The chassis. I don't know why I said chassis. Chassis, which is also just recently released. It's a belt-driven 6-wheel drive system. Is there a reason that you guys chose to go with 2 traction wheels and 1 Omni wheel instead of 2 Omni wheels on each side? Could you talk a little bit more about the design that went into designing this chassis?
Yeah, so the 4+2, the 4 tractions and 2 Omnis is my favorite 6-wheel drive orientation, and it has been for a while. I really love that it gives you, when combined with a dropped center like this has, it gives you the ability to have really lightning fast turning most of the time if your weight bias is toward your Omni wheel. And if you are in a situation where you need a ton of traction, you want to orient your robot so your Omnis are pushing forward, and you can go up to somebody and lean back on 4 traction wheels and get a lot of that grip. When you're pushing, the back wheel is the most important as far as traction goes, because you're going to get some forces that want to lift your robot up. So you likely will get most weight on the furthest away wheel. And that's why it's really nice in that situation to have a traction wheel as opposed to an Omni wheel.
So how did you get the drop center? Because the
The drop
channel
center is
is
using. So it's using our drop center plates, the 1616 series bearing plate, and it's a 4 mil thick piece of acetal with a 14 mil hole, 2 mil off
You
center.
might switch that camera.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Show it.
Yeah. So you can actually see it here where instead of dropping the center wheel like you would do on a traditional chassis, you are actually pushing the outer wheels up.
Okay.
So instead of having 2 sets of bearing plates, we've got 4, and they're on the outer wheels.
Cool. Also, acetal. I'm pretty sure it's acetal, but we can have this debate later. Ashray, want to move on to the next thing?
Yeah. So one of the other products that you guys recently released that hasn't really been talked about much is your 2106 series 8mm rec shafts. Could you guys talk about what it is, or like why it's different from the traditional Rex shafts we're used to seeing?
Do you want to do this one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the main idea of adding the snap ring to the end is to cut down on the amount of collars that are used in an assembly. So every shaft needs to be constrained, from both directions, and so adding that snap ring allows you to pin that up against a bearing, up against channel, allowing you to cut down on the amount of collars and thus the amount of parts and the weight. So that shaft can be either run both directions through bearings, either with the long end through the bearings or the short stubby end into the face of a bearing, as is done in the Strafer chassis, allowing it to be just much simpler and a lot easier to put together in most cases.
A big thing is that E-clip or snap ring is larger than the inner race of a bearing, but it's smaller than the outer race of our standard 14 mil flanged bearings. So you're only contacting the part of the bearing that spins. Generally, you need to add a shim to something like a hub that's right up against a bearing. So that eliminates shims as well. And then it's got threads on either end, so it can act as a crazy beefy standoff or a dead axle setup. Or you can actually capture a bearing on the end of the shaft with a bearing on the short side of the shaft and a screw, which is really cool. I've never used it, but it's awesome.
So I know like a lot of the FRC products that I've seen from like IFI have used those E-clips. I know the ball shifter specifically does. When I was trying to design a ball shifter for FTC, I had to mess around with that. So it's a really cool addition, and it also lightweights your robot significantly. So you could have a much faster robot. Moving on to the next thing, one of the things that I was personally curious about was your radio controller. It wasn't really related to FTC. I was just curious, what was the thinking behind bringing that to goBILDA instead of like Actobotics, and what use cases do you have for it?
Sure, that's a great question. As we mentioned before, we come from the Servo City side, and a huge part of that is the hobbyist market. So we know a lot about that. We have a lot of experience there. And while goBILDA right now is primarily focused in FTC, in the future, we are definitely wanting to broaden that out to more hobbyists and other markets. So having a radio control receiver set essentially allows us to then do a lot of kits that can be used outside of FTC. And we have a lot of plans for some pretty cool kits coming down the line as well.
I've also talked to a few teams who have bought them for use in prototyping in FTC. It surprised me.
It's such a much easier way to get things up and running and moving.
Yeah, we used it on the robot in 3 days.
Demonstrated on this one here, yeah.
If you only need control 6 things, it's really solid.
Yep.
Cool. And do you have a motor controller that goes with that? That way you can run it directly to, like, let's say I wanted to run an FTC robot, but I didn't want to deal with the control hub or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, we've got the Roboclaw Series motor controllers. They're not strictly ours, but we resell them, and they give you a lot of the flexibility you would normally get from an expansion hub. So you can run a closed loop feedback controller on them, like a PID controller, and you can run PWM and RC outputs.
Yeah, I think in a lot of more of the electronics servos, it'll run on serial commands as well.
Yep.
2C.
If you're looking to run on a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino.
Run a Pi and you run 15 of them or whatever. Yeah, that has that functionality.
Yep. It also lets you tune stuff on the fly from your Arduino, which is cool.
It is, yeah, very nice.
Ethan and Luke, I do have a question for you guys. You mentioned about getting into different markets, but I didn't hear you mention FRC. So is there any opportunity that goBILDA is going to be looking at entering the FRC market, especially once things maybe stabilize a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, that is a downside, is there's really not a whole lot of FRC this year. But, I mean, as you guys can see behind us, we do some ride-on projects out of goBILDA, like these tables, I guess you can see, are all framed in goBILDA. So it's super strong. But I think there are a few pieces like interfacing with 2-inch bolt circle motors and a couple of other adapters we would definitely need before we tried to push as a building system in FRC. But maybe some individual parts is definitely something we've always looked at.
So maybe down the road, not something very high up on our list at this time, I would probably say.
Yeah. So moving on to some of our... Sorry. Yeah.
No worries.
Moving on to some of our audience questions, we had a question from Shrey P360, who's asking, can they buy the old Mechanums, or are those completely discontinued?
Those have been totally discontinued. One thing is you may reach out and see if anybody wants to sell their old Mechanums. You may be able to get a discount, and they might have a nice incentive to jump onto some new ones. There are also a metric ton of teams who are getting a Strafer chassis for a really good deal, so they may have some extra Mechanums they'd want to let go at a pretty good price too. The nice thing about Mechanums is they last a while.
They
So
really do. Yeah.
You can have a season have them for several seasons.
I know on Wizards, we had Nexus Mechanum wheels in Velocity Vortex, and those same wheels were used again in our Relic Recovery robot, and then again in our Rover Ruckus robot. And so they are definitely worth the investment if your team is going to sustain. William16633 asks, odometry encoders anytime soon? Go coders.
No.
It'd be really cool. There's always kind of some if somebody wants a part in goBILDA, sometimes you got to argue and fight for it. So I think you found people on two opposite sides of the fence here. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just depends on what we end up wanting to spend development time on.
So I'm not hearing a no.
That's true. We have a hard time
Just-
saying hard no, it'll never happen, because you never know. Sometimes.
Yeah, I guess
somebody
we
will get
shouldn't say
enough.
no. We should say probably not in the next couple of years.
Maybe.
Even on pro encoder side of things.
Yeah.
All right, Ashay.
Yeah. So another question we have from Y Lexot, which is who's asking the rec shafts are really nice. They want to 3D print some hubcaps for the Strafer. Is that a possibility?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it depends on if you're trying to make your real hubcap and you're just trying to make your wheels look prettier. If you're trying to cover the wheels completely, you may need to reduce the crossbar length. There's really not a whole lot of
Yeah.
clearance for
Yeah,
a printed.
Pretty close.
I know I've worked with a team or two who has made kind of an open source Thingiverse print to go around the outside of Mechanums, but you don't get very much material. And it doesn't take very much for that to bend in and all of a sudden be in contact with your wheel, which would stink.
Yeah. William16633 also asked, do you guys have small Omni wheels? He was the same guy asking about
Sure.
odometry, so I'm assuming they want some odometry Omnis.
I'm going to also tack that on and ask if there's any opportunity for small Mechanum wheels, as we've seen smaller vectored intake wheels released for FRC.
Yeah, we've got 72 mil Omni wheels. Those are the smallest we have. It's hard to go very much smaller and have a usable wheel in goBILDA, with channel at least. So an Omni wheel like that would be primarily like intakes and odometry. But smaller Mechanums is something we've talked about for sure. It'd be cool.
Yeah, I could see a small Mechanum wheel being used with the rec shaft. That way you could do exactly what a ton of FRC teams do, slide a ton of those things onto a half-inch check shaft, but rec shaft in this case, and then use that as an intake. Would work perfectly for most things. Would have to try that out with Frisbees because I've seen mixed results.
Yeah.
Jason.
So yeah. So another question by Jason 2212. They're asking how much compression would you recommend on the rings for your shooter?
That
I'm
is
assuming
your cup of tea right there.
I wish I could remember exactly how much we had on the robot in 3 days. I think the biggest thing I would recommend is using some system that lets you adjust it, because it depends a lot on how grippy your wheel is. If you have a really grippy wheel, you may not need as much compression. If your wheel itself is compliant, you probably won't need as much compression. But this is an example is we just created a curve, and in CAD, this curve matches just like a 1-to-1 of the wheel, the ring plus a wheel. And then what we did is we just moved it 8 millimeters in on the tight side and left it at the normal kind of correct distance on the loose side. So it starts in tight, and then the amount of compression decreases as it goes through its stroke, and you end up with a perfectly round ring which means a lot of that kind of springing back to shape happens with when that ring is still controlled, which can help increase accuracy. Gluten-Free did this in their robot, their preseason robot, and their shooter was really good. So it was a fun thing to kind of prototype some with. And you can do it the other way around too, where you start off with less compression and increase gradually as you go. That was something I did some experimenting with too on this shooter, and it seemed to be cool too.
Cool. That's the last question that we had. Oh, we got one more question from Arush. Any new cool products to be on the lookout for? Any recommendations for a J shooter, 90 degrees? Thanks.
Those are really my recommendations for 90-degree shooters. Make it so you can vary the amount of compression. I just 3D printed this guide. That's a really hard, easy way to do it, and it's hard to get something that's going to be like more consistent, I guess, than that. But we're always working on new products and new things coming down the line. We are really excited to be able to release some more stuff that's coming pretty soon.
Cool. We'll be excited to talk about that when it comes out on FTC Recap. So that's gonna be our last. Question for today. If you have more questions for goBILDA, Ethan is on the Discord and very active on there. So make sure to reach out there. He's on both the Fun Discord and the FTC Discord. But before we get into trivia, we're going to start our giveaway. Tyler, can you tell us a little bit about our giveaway?
Well, I mean, really, goBILDA could probably do a better job than what we could. But so we'll just announce we're giving away a set of the 96 millimeter Mecanum wheel set. And Ethan, I know you mentioned there might be a little bit more with that as well.
So we have some kind of really limited edition merch. We've got some coasters and pins that are Mecanum wheel themed around this launch that we're going to be sending out with them. I totally forgot to grab some, but they are really cool. I guess you'll have to take our word on it.
So if you're interested in winning that, don't forget you have to make sure you're following our channel in order to be eligible. And how about a keyword from goBILDA today? We tend to get some pretty interesting ones out of you guys.
Slim.
Slim. I like that one.
Slim. All right, so type Slim into chat right now if you're interested in winning. We're going to draw in just a few minutes for that. And don't forget, if you're a subscriber, you're going to get 5 times luck to win because, you know, all that hashtag rig that we do for our subs in here as well. So really cool stuff with that. And we're going to be playing trivia in just a moment as well, too.
Yep. I was hoping for Go Coder, but we'll deal with Slim.
I mean, you could have made the suggestion to Sean. Just
I should have made the suggestion before. But now we're going to switch over to some fun trivia. We've already selected somebody from the audience. You'll be playing against Ashrey for a chance to win $60. We've got 5 trivia questions. This time, all the trivia questions are robotics related, but not necessarily first related. Whoever gets the most right wins. If there's a tie, we will use time as a tiebreaker. So don't look up the answers. And with that being said, Tyler, do we have our guest?
Yeah. Shrey, are you there now?
Oh, I am. I'm sorry.
Oh, my goodness. All right. So once again, we're going to put up Ashrey, who you're going to be competing against. Did you hear how trivia works?
No, I did not.
Okay, so you're going to get 5 questions once again to go through, and these are all robotics-themed questions, as Sean said. You're going to answer them as quickly as possible because time is our tiebreaker. So once again, answer as quickly as possible for that. If you're not sure, you can say pass. We'll come back to it. But otherwise, whatever you say, that's what we're going to take for your answer. And Shrey, is that your name?
Yeah, that is.
Perfect. And Shrey, what team are you on?
2845 Team Duct Tape.
Awesome. Well, good luck to you. Once again, make sure you type in Slim, by the way, if you're interested in winning those Mecanum wheels from goBILDA. And Shrey, your time begins in 3.
Wait. Ashrey's gonna take off his headset.
Oh, Ashrey.
Trying to cheat the system, Ashrey.
I couldn't hear Shrey anyways, so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can't hear Shrey, so that's it. We'll give a big warm back. All right, we'll start this. This is going great, so we'll try again, starting in 3, 2, 1. So, Byte Force is a BattleBots team that has won the championship 3 out of the past 4 years. One FRC team has the lead a Byte Force mentor.
Pass.
What is the name of the first LEGO League Explore game for this year?
Oof. I guess pass.
All right, what is the price of the Boston Dynamics Spot robot? Just closest guess to the Spot robot.
I guess 30,000.
What channel will the next season of BattleBots premiere on? What network or channel? Hope you like BattleBots, man.
I don't. I guess pass.
Yeah.
How many successful launches has the company SpaceX had?
100.
All right. We'll go back to ones you passed. Byte Force is a BattleBots team that has won the championship 3 out of the past 4 years. Which FRC team does the lead of Byte Force mentor?
I don't know. I guess 254.
What is the name of the first LEGO League Explore game for this year?
Was it replay?
And last
think
question you
Replay.
passed on. Which channel will the next season of BattleBots premiere on?
I don't know.
All right, and time. All right, we'll give big wave to Oshray so he knows to come back on here. And we'll give him a shot. He's been looking awkwardly into the camera for just a little while now, so now it's his turn to do a bit more. So Oshray, are you ready to go with the questions?
Yeah.
All right, man.
Let's do it.
Let's bust through these. Trey will be right back for you then. And in 3, 2, 1. Byte Force is a BattleBots team that has won the championship 3 out of the past 4 years. And which FRC team does the lead of Byte Force mentor?
Pass.
What is the name of the first LEGO League Explore game for this year?
Oh, Playmakers.
What is the price of the Boston Dynamics Spot robot? We're going to take the closest.
The name of the spot
Nope,
robot?
the price of the Boston Dynamics Spot
Oh.
robot.
$250,000.
Which channel will the next season of BattleBots premiere on?
CNBC.
How many successful launches has the company SpaceX had?
1.
And time. All right, we're going to go through these. We'll bring Shrey back in here and go through these one at a time. So, Ashray, how do you feel you did?
What was that?
Those were robotics trivia questions, man. So,
Oh my.
all right, we'll go through these one by one. Shrey, how do you feel you did after hearing Ashray?
I did terrible.
All right, we'll find out. So, with that said, Byte Force is a BattleBots team that has won the Robotics Championship 3 out of the past 4 years. Which FRC team does the lead of Byte Force mentor? Ashray, I'll give you one more chance because you said pass on here and I didn't get back to you.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to go with 254 Cheesy Poops. Just...
Man, I feel like that's totally rigged now. So, all right, we'll take that. That is correct for both of you guys for 254. That's my fault. So,
Oh.
all right, so 1-1. It was like the only team most FTC people can rattle off, right? So,
Yeah,
all right,
it's the only team I knew.
what is the name of the first LEGO League Explore game for this year? Shrey said Replay. Ashray said Playmakers. It is Playmakers 2-1.
Oh.
What is the price of the Boston Dynamics Spot robot? Shrey said $30,000. Ashray said $250,000. It's $74,500. Shrey gets the point. It is 2-2. Which channel will the next season of BattleBots premiere on? Shrey said he didn't know and came back, and I don't know. Ashray said CNBC. It's Discovery. Discovery. So 2-2. So we do have 2 different answers for this. How many successful launches has the company SpaceX had? Shrey said 100. Ashray said 1. The answer is 100. Shrey is taking it. $60 going in. Shrey, congratulations. You didn't do too bad. You got 3 out of 5 right. How do you feel?
I guess I feel good now.
Awesome. We'll follow up with you afterwards to make sure you get that. And congratulations for the big win. Thanks for playing.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap up our show here with the big winner here, $60 in trivia.
Awesome. That was a fun giveaway, fun trivia. We're now going to do our giveaway. Tyler, could you draw for our giveaway?
Oh, yeah, we got that too, don't we? So, all right, so with that said, we're going to do the giveaway once again. That was for the Omni Wheels and a little couple extras here from goBILDA. Our winner
We
for this...
actually have them this time if you want to see them.
Yeah,
some
let's take a
pins
look.
and some coasters.
Nice. And the winner of that is going to be P Young 461. Congratulations, and a subscriber. So lots of rigged emotes in chat, by the way. Clearly, we rigged it for P Young 461 to win. Congratulations. Make sure you reach out to us with your shipping information, and goBILDA will get that out to you. Thanks a lot, goBILDA.
Thank you for all the follows, subscriptions that we received today. Don't forget that you can subscribe for free with your parents' Amazon Prime account. We hope you enjoyed this episode of FTC Recap. If you want to stay connected with what First Updates Now FTC is doing, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @FunFTC, and join our Discord through the link in the chat.
We're always looking for feedback, so reach out to us on the Fun FTC Discord to let us know what ideas you have for future shows. We want to bring you the content that you guys want.
On behalf of myself, Ashray, our producer Tyler working behind the scenes, I'd like to thank you for tuning in.